Hey, Joe Casey with Casey Aviation here, and man, I'm excited. I don't know if you could see me on the new room that we've got here, but we spent a bunch of money and really upped our ante, and we got some cool stuff. I'm here with Eric Earl. Eric, welcome. Glad you're here.
Hey, Joe. Yeah, this is exciting. This is a full studio setup.
I'm telling you that there. If you go back to the Malibu Guru podcast at the very beginning, it's because I started listening to podcasts, and I was like, this is what I listen to. And somebody always said, in business, you should do things that you like, because you're probably not the only idiot in the world.
You want to emulate that which you respect or you think is done well.
Yeah, exactly. But I use podcasts like I listen to some other podcasts, and I like them and I listen to them. And I thought, part of my message, probably what I want to be able to do is get this message out to the world in whatever way I can. And I use podcasts, so I thought, hey, I'll just try it. And so I did. I started making some podcasts, but it literally was holding my phone and, talking to people as we, here, you give your opinion, I'll give mine.
Yeah, I actually went back and listened to some of the early ones the other day, and it's like, man, we've gone to level 10, if you will, in quality and everything. It's fun to see and fun to be a part of that process.
It's fun to be a part of it. And I wanted to give a quick shout out to you because you've been a big part of it. I mean, moving it from the iPhone in the hand and really, not that good to what it is going to be here today, which is going to be a whole lot better. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and this, I think, might be our first video podcast that we release. So that'll be cool for all of our subscribers on YouTube, and it'll get to the Apple podcast as well. So it's going to go everywhere.
I hope so.
But then still coming out in video form. So
yeah,
that's cool.
The goal of the Malibu Guru podcast is to put out good data related to really the owner flown. It's Malibu Guru. I get it, because that kind of has a little ring to it. It sort of sounds cool, but really we want to talk to the TBM and the King Air people as well. But this is a great place for us to be. So what we want to do is bring cool people here, people that fly these airplanes, talk about flying them, talk about aspects of flying them, bring vendors in, and give my opinion, because guess what? It's my opinion.
Because you get to say what you want, and that's exciting. That's fun.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So,
and now we don't have to pass the phone back and forth. We can both chime in when we're ready.
That's right. So we're going to get better and better and better, and hopefully that's the case.
Awesome.
What are we talking about today?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some T-28s.
Yeah.
And
How'd I get into
this is a crazy story.
It's a crazy story. Yeah.
But yeah, how'd you get into, or how'd you even have the idea of pursuing ownership in a T-28?
Well, first off,
a pair of T-28s.
Yeah, actually two of them. It's kind of cool. What you really do have to go back into even further than that. I'm a big believer in having a broad aviation spectrum, meaning, in other words, not just doing one thing, but doing other things within the aviation spectrum helps you do that main thing. So if you fly a jet prop, then flying a glider is going to help you be a good jet prop pilot. Flying a helicopter, believe it or not. If you look at my aviation credentials, I'm a guy that has chosen a broad spectrum of aviation credentials and aviation experiences because I think that's important. And so I ended up doing a lot of different stuff all over the place. And so, and that's just probably part of my mantra, part of just what I want to do. So anyway, so it came, and the other thing that I have a real penchant for is old airplanes.
Yeah. I know you love old airplanes. In fact, I've seen a few of the things that you've owned in the past. The Stearman that's sitting here behind us, you've owned a Stearman before. You own currently a 1940 Porterfield collegiate.
Right. That's right.
And that's we're pushing 80 years on that, 80 years old,
that's
85
right.
years old.
That's 85. I was about to say 85. So, I mean, it's a really old. And I love that airplane, not because it's powerful or because it does something better. It's just old.
And there's not very many. There's maybe, I bet, less than 10 flying. There's no way to even know the number.
But I don't know the number, but I know that there's not been a Porterfield at Oshkosh in at least the last 5 years, because I've looked. And I haven't seen it, and right. I would think I would be able to hunt that buddy down.
Is this year the year that
this
you
is
get
the year? I'm going on record.
You said it before.
I know.
I'm gonna say it here. Joe said it before.
I'm telling you, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there with a Porterfield. Either that, or I'm going to be halfway there with a broken Porterfield. we're going to try. We're going to do everything we can to get that Porterfield.
If not, we can pick it up on a trailer and get it the rest of the way.
Exactly, because here's the deal. Yeah, we're gonna figure out how to get that. We're gonna now if I got a trailer, I'm not going to Oshkosh with a trailer. We're going to do something else, but literally, I'm going to leave a couple days prior, and I'm going to make a nice little trip, and is my hope.
Yeah.
Get all the way up to there, and I'm going to park that bad boy right there next to the theater in the woods, and I'm going to have a tent, and I'm telling you, that's where I'm going to be.
We do have to do some prep work. We got to get you some custom signage made with the year and the history and stuff like that, because that's always cool to see on those antique airplanes.
That's right, and this airplane has a lot of history. I mean, a bunch of history. So I'm going to have that. I'm going to have something to kind of show that history and talk about it. And I think it'd be the Porterfield needs to go to Oshkosh. So anyway, but I like old airplanes. I've owned 3 Stearmans. I've owned a Myers OTW. I just like old airplanes. I love the fact that aviation in its very early days was so dangerous, so primitive, but yet we were flying. We went from the Wright brothers, in 1903, being able to lift off the ground. Mm-hmm. And if you go through World War I, where really
aviation was not a big deal in World War I. In fact, I was at the Boeing Museum of Flight in Seattle, and I saw the first fighter plane there at that museum, and it was just an old non-painted canvas wing, and it had a machine gun that was Actually, it was up high, because they couldn't sink the machine gun with the propeller.
That's right.
And so
that's right.
It was not a huge player, though.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the beginning of World War I, I mean, they were literally flying kites. I mean, it was terrible. But I'll tell you, World War I advanced aviation.
Right.
You look at the very end of World War I. Now they're shooting, machine guns through the propellers.
Right.
And it's a major player because they were able to fly these airplanes up, look down at the ground, figure out where all the trenches are.
Right.
Literally write them. They had like a dude in the back that was like a scribe or an artist that would draw, because they couldn't take pictures that clear.
Drawing maps, basically.
Drawing maps and then landing the airplane. Of course, now you had to go shoot those guys down. So toward the very end of World War I, there was tremendous advancements in aviation. And then you go into the 20s, and then you go into the 30s where you got depression. Mm-hmm. 20s, you got all these aviation advancements, and then you get the Great Depression, and then there's not much happening.
Yeah, you get to World War II, and everything in World War II.
That's right.
The
two wars advanced aviation in a big, big way. I don't know. There's just something about a 1940 Porterfield that predates World War II, where all the advancements are, and I think it's cool. Yeah. So that's all.
Absolutely. And I think it's cool too, because you and I both spent time in the Army. We were a part of the military, and it's cool to see something that is that far, that long ago. I just think it's neat.
I do too. Well, so here's what happened. You asked how did I get into T-28s. Well, Robert Johnson, right? He's a client of ours, owns a King Air E90. I got to train him. Actually, I got to give him a check ride once too. And he's been on the podcast. So if you go back and look for Robert Johnson, he did a podcast with us, which was wonderful. Incredible guy. Giving him a check ride was one of the easiest things I've ever done. I mean, it was just, he's a fantastic pilot. And little did I know, he is the pilot for the Trojan Phlyers. Now, the Trojan Phlyers, I didn't understand anything but what they did, but these cats are flying in Oshkosh during the air show.
Every year.
I mean, it's incredible.
And if you go to their website, there's a list. You got to go see these guys, because it's cool. I've only had the opportunity to see videos of it, but we're talking big, mean radial engines.
A T-28's a big airplane with a big engine on the front. And if you look at the air show circuit that's out there, I think there's only two shows that have military aircraft in formation. Mm-hmm. So there's some other airplanes that, the F-22 Raptor comes in. That's a military. But we're not talking about present military. We're talking about that's actually using older military aircraft in not just a flyby of a cool airplane. The Mustang going up and doing something. But two T-28s. And T-28's a big airplane. And big, loud engine. It's cool. It's great. Anyway, so Robert came in and I gave him a check ride. We got to talking, and it was like, man, this is a great thing. He said, well, do you want to join? I was like, what do you mean you want to join? He's like, you can buy into the Trojan Phlyers.
It's a partnership, basically.
Yeah, it's a partnership on 2 airplanes. And I was like, well, tell me more. And he started telling me more. I was like, well, that sounds great. And they were at a place where another partner had left. They were looking for a new one. And he said, hey, do you want to be a part of this?
Yeah, so it seems like that's the spot you want to be. You got military airplanes, old airplanes, cool airplanes, big airplanes. It meets all your checklist items that you like.
Check.
That's
it. And there's two of them, which
Yeah.
means that, like, I can go up there and go flying and fly in formation and do. Anyway, I can just do some really, really cool things. So anyway, these airplanes are experimental. Well, what I mean by that is they were former military, and then they come off the military registry and go on to the FAA registry, and they're registered as experimental. So, but they also are heavy, and they're also big, more horsepower. And basically, the regs say that you have to have a license to be able to fly. It's not a type rating because they're experimental, but it's like a type rating,
right?
In the sense, yeah. And so, in other words, I got to take a check ride. Well, so far I have done the ground school, which was literally 3 days of ground school, and I start the flight training soon. It's going to be real soon. And then right after flight training, I got to take a check ride. So, but at the end of that, I'll be up in the T-28. I'm looking at them on my computer right here, and I'm telling you, these are some pretty sweet airplanes.
Yeah.
And
So I've seen the pictures of them as well. What services were these planes in?
Both of these say Marine. Now I had that on the it's do not disturb except for your wife.
We'll leave it in there.
We'll leave it. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Deanna.
Hey, Deanna. Yeah, sorry, I'll call you back. So, both of these are Marines, but that's just a paint job.
Yeah.
Most of these are Navy.
Okay.
The Navy had a big, there's different variants of the T-28, but the Navy was the big user of them.
Got it.
I tried to talk them in because we're talking about a paint job.
Army.
I tried to talk them into an
get these
Army.
Navy steermans off your ball here.
Yeah. The Army did fly like just a couple of them for just a little bit, but they didn't. It's not like the Navy and the Marines. That's the big heavy hitters.
So that's cool. That's cool. A few questions about these airplanes. How big is this airplane? What does it weigh?
I forget the gross weight. I should know that off the top of my head. It is a.
Are we in excess of?
It's a King Air
15,000 pounds.
Yeah, you're way up there.
Okay.
It's King Air 90 size. Like when you walk up to this airplane, you're not just like you're going up some steps to get onto the wing, and I am able to make a big step and step up there and grab the handholds. Deanna had real trouble because the height of this thing, you got to have a little step stool if you're not
to get to the first step.
To get to the first step to be able to, by the time you're sitting in the cockpit, you're probably 12 feet off the ground.
Wow, that's actually huge.
Yeah. I mean, I've sat in it a lot. I've not flown it yet.
Yeah,
but it's coming.
Yeah, when you fly it, you got to fly it down here so we can all see it.
Oh, trust me, it'd be like I'm actually looking forward to. Matter of fact, you can go ahead and put this on the record. We have our Young Eagles Day.
Oh,
and
that's cool.
There's going to be a day where I'm going to go get it for the Young Eagles event, fly it down, cool. And then we're going to give some kids some rides. Though, truly,
that's memorable.
Yeah,
nobody ever gets to do it, so you'll change
exactly.
someone's life. Probably make them fall in love with aviation, and
I hope so.
Do something cool.
Or their dad will think it's cool.
That's for sure. It's loud.
Yeah, it's loud. It's big. It's a big. And it'll do aerobatics. Yeah. It does all the little things that I want to be able to do. So anyway, the T-28's coming up. T-28's Trojan Phlyers are going to Oshkosh again this year. They're in negotiation as to what level of that they're going to participate. They're doing the Warbird part of it, and whether or not they're in the air show, we're still trying to figure that out. But they'll be in the air show as a Warbird participant, so pretty excited about that. But they got a full schedule all the way across. So Chip Lamb and Robert Johnson, those are the two pilots that actually fly it during the air show. They got a great little show, and and of course the highlight is the T-28, loud. Meaning it does what you want in an air show, which is aerobatics, loud. But now you're doing formation, and formation is the differentiator. In other words, if you had just one of these doing something, I see that's cool.
Right.
But you have two in tight formation doing loops and all the different things. It's a totally different game.
Super neat. How powerful are we talking with this big radial engine?
You're asking all these technical. I should know that. I want to say it's 1,600 horsepower.
Wow.
I mean, it's a big number.
We're talking triple what a Meridian has.
Yeah.
And a radial engine, not even a turbine.
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about...
And it's probably holding an excess of 30 or 40 gallons of oil, I would guess.
It's a big number. Again, I should know that off the top of my head. You're going to kill me because I don't know it. But yeah, you don't measure it in quarts.
Yeah, it's gallons. Yeah. I know the Stearman was the same. It was 20 gallons or so.
It's a huge number.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when they're in the hangar, there's like, oil pans
barrels
everywhere. Yeah.
Barrels.
Yeah,
to catch it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, in matter of fact, you were talking about like getting up on the wing to get into the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is the top of the wing can be oily. So you're getting up on the top of a wing that's high and oily. You know what I'm saying? It's not, this isn't like a clean, pristine, you're going to get in your TBM and go somewhere. This is a
big, mean, nasty airplane.
Right. But that's part of it's when somebody flies this airplane, when anybody flies this airplane, the idea behind it is you're flying an airplane. That history comes with it. It's one thing to watch it on a movie or to see it hanging from the ceiling in a museum.
Right.
It's another thing when you smell the oil as it's being burned and see the oil all over the place and go, okay, that's normal, and listen to it and feel it and hear the growl. And you get in tune with this, and then you start realizing, okay, this is what they had to do, because when this airplane was built in the late 40s, early 50s, piston engines were still the thing. And the bigger the engine, the more the horsepower. So you had these huge engines, to be able to do, and that's what the T-28 is. It's a big engine time, and the time has passed, meaning we don't use them anymore. T-28's not good for anything other than air shows and giving rides and being cool and people keeping them flying. But I'll tell you, there's a passionate bunch of people in the world that think the T-28 is cool as could be, and they're still flying them. And you can find parts. You can do. It's a good warbird to own, because rugged, sturdy, heavy, all the good things, and parts availability.
Yeah, so, And then I know there's a bunch of others that are kind of in similar categories. Get the P-51. That's a big deal, but it's.
But your acquisition price
it's way through the roof.
Go through the roof. Yeah.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah, and now these things aren't cheap.
Right.
I mean, this is not. This is expensive.
We're talking $3 or $4 million acquisition price on a P-51, probably.
Right, and these are nowhere near that. I mean, not a tenth of that. $300,000 or $400,000 will get you a pretty nice one.
And then the cost of upkeep is up there.
But then you got to keep it up.
That's
right. And you got cylinders, and so there's the ways that we fly it today are probably more conservative than what they flew it back then. Especially as a trainer, no one's training to fly in these things, but that's what they used to do. This is the airplane that used to take out to the ship, and you would land on the ship, with a tail hook in the back to learn how to fly, how to land on an aircraft carrier. Yeah. Well, that beat an airplane up. We don't do that today.
Right. And if you watch, I've seen comparison videos of modern day fighter jets, and they show how a Navy pilot is taught to land versus an Air Force pilot. Yeah. And those Navy guys are slamming the ground.
Yeah.
Because you got to get down and you got to get the hook to grab the wire.
That's right.
Stop on the ship.
That's right.
Air Force, they got 10,000 feet of runway. You can be smooth as butter.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk about what stepping stone was the T-28 historically. What were they stepping into from training in a T-28?
Yeah, you go from a T-28, and you're in the 1950s, and is really when this airplane really came into being. If you flew for the Navy, you're flying a T-28, and then you're launching into the next thing, which would be next fighter. Which you would go. Yeah. In their early days, it was Corsair. We still had Corsairs. Matter of fact, the Corsair flew, I want to say, into the 70s in terms of some other lesser countries that ended up buying. Right. But you go into the Corsair, and then you go into the Sabre, and some other. You move into the jet world, from this airplane. So this is an airplane that was an advanced trainer, and the next step is into an airplane that's operational. Or something.
So it's basically similar to what the Navy flies now. I think it's the T-38 fighter jet trainer that they're training in, and it's serving that same purpose of modern day.
Correct. It's a stepping stone airplane to take you to that next advanced fighter. Yeah, the T-38, no one's fighting with a T-38.
And they're stepping into F-16s or
that's right. You're coming out of the T-38.
F-22, stuff like that.
That's exactly right. So this is a stepping stone to that. So there's a whole host of people out in the world that look back in their military careers, pilots, and they flew a T-28, not for long, but it was that airplane that took them out of that moved them up into that next realm. So they usually they look back and go, that was a strong, sturdy, great airplane to train in,
Right.
tandem. So you got the feel of a fighter.
Yeah.
And it was a great airplane as far as that's concerned.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So what is the next step for you? It's training. How long is that training going to take you?
It's probably going to be, I bet you 10 flights is my guess.
So you're probably going to do 15 hours of flight time. And
10,
then you're going to
take
take
flight time and then a check ride.
And is that with a DPE?
They don't call it a DPE. But it is effectively a DPE. It's an examiner, not a designated pilot examiner.
Yeah.
I forget the name. It's a vintage airplane, VAE, I think is what it's called. But anyway, same thing.
Yeah.
Meaning you got to fly with somebody that's going to run you through the mill and make sure you know how to fly this.
You're going to do emergency procedures. You're going to do standard checklist items. You're going to
all the normal things.
Do a normal check ride, basically.
Front seat, back seat.
Prove your ability in the airplane.
Absolutely.
Before they let you go fly.
Yeah, and a oral exam prior to check your knowledge of systems.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's cool.
And it's a reasonably complicated airplane.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of big numbers. Lots of
the intercom systems from front to back. The hydraulic systems everything's hydraulic in the airplane. So like opening and closing the canopy's hydraulic. So you really kind of need to know those systems.
Yeah, and what about what systems are installed on the? Do we have any modern avionics in the
ones
in the
that we have?
T-28s?
The two that we have are quasi modern. I mean,
Not completely original.
Oh no, we got a Garmin 430.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not designed for instrument. It's designed to get you from here to the next air show or get you up where you can go do loops, rolls, and spins, and then come back and land.
Yeah.
So a Garmin 430 does plenty good, and they are IFR capable, but no one flies IFR in these things.
Yeah,
I mean,
no point.
No, I mean it's it's designed then for primary training, and today going to air shows and going up flying and just having fun in a cool airplane.
Yeah, that's absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see these things. I'm excited for you to get trained. I know that's going to be a fun experience. I know you love learning to fly new things. And
you know what's interesting? What's already been interesting about this airplane is that the speed regime of this airplane is very similar to the turbine airplanes. PT or the P46Ts, in other words, Meridian M600s, in TBMs, all the landing speeds. So there's things that are available. That there are aspects of the T28 that dovetail perfectly into the PA46 TBM world because the speeds are all the same. I'll give you, for instance, if you look at you have a crosswind. Well, the Navy, because they're the ones that wrote the book on this thing, have basically a addition of airspeed based upon the gust and based upon the level of crosswind.
Yeah.
So if your approach speed's 85 knots, but you have a 12 knot crosswind, well, they have a chart that gives you a number that you add to your 85 knots. So now you're not going to fly 5, you're going to fly 92.
We do the same thing in small airplanes. In 182s or Bonanzas is general of half the gust factor.
Correct. But what we don't do in the PA46 and TBM world is have a chart that actually...
we don't pull out anything that gives us
right.
a defined number.
So we have in the PA46 and the TBM world sort of a thing where people go, well, that's not in the PO8, so we're not going to do that. Well, no, you still need to do that because physics still matter.
Right.
And here's an airplane with very similar characteristics to the space we're in, where the Navy lists a number. So it's kind of like big, it's when you talk about things transferring over, you're able to look at this, go to training and go, you know what? When I get a 15 knot crosswind, I ought to bump my landing speeds up just a little bit.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, the other day I did I was doing a check ride, matter of fact, believe it or not, with a student. We talked about, he was doing a short field landing. And we had a strong crosswind, so you don't have to come inside. What should you do on a short field landing if you got a strong headwind crosswind component? The winds were like 17 knots, and I'm doing a commercial pilot check ride, and that student accurately said, "Hey, normally I would fly. I'm making it up. I forget the airplane. 72 knots on that approach, but I'm going to bump that up by 6 knots and fly this short field approach at that number." I totally was like, great, this is wonderful that you're using your knowledge of aviation and applying it to this situation, which is great. Well, if you look at the PA-46 and TBM, it doesn't say anything about that in the in the POH.
Right.
Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. It's good to be able to do this. So, in other words, there's ways that learning about other airplanes make you better in this airplane.
That's awesome. That's
one
cool.
way.
That's cool. Yeah, well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what's next, and this is a bucket list item for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited. Hey, trust me, the day I get up in the T-28, within 2 weeks, I'll be pulling up here into Lufkin and saying, "Hey, y'all jump in, let's go." I'll
Can't wait.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I promise you.
Awesome. Well, cool, Joe. Well, thanks for having this conversation about these airplanes. A super neat experience. Definitely looking forward to seeing what you can do in a T-28, and I'm excited to ride in it.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So I can promise you, when I get done up in this T-28, I'm gonna give some kids a ride over there at the, with Young Eagles. But the other thing that's going to happen is I'm going to come back and give everybody a ride within Casey Aviation. The person I'm most excited about is Stephanie. Because she's so scared of so many different things.
I'm not getting in that fabric wing airplane.
But when I pull up in a T-28, she's going to get in. She might not. Oh, yeah. I mean, she might resist. She's going to resist, but
it'll be life changing.
That's right. We're going to get her up. She'll do it. She'll just have to be like that. Hey, thanks for joining us on the Malibu Guru podcast. I like talking about T-28s, and I appreciate your work taking this very immature podcast from times past to where it is today, ramping it up, and you've been a big part of that. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Joe, it's been my pleasure. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I really appreciate you inviting me on to be a part of this podcast. So thanks for having me.
You bet. Joe Casey and Eric Earl signing off.